Warm greeting from the Center for National Security Studies. Welcome to one more episode of Book Conversation of the book Great Power Games from Western Decline to Eastern Ascent. Today, we are in a conversation with its author, Shri Vikram Sood, former chief of R&AW, India's external intelligence agency. And this is the third part of a compelling trilogy, the series that he has written. And our today's guest seriously doesn't need any introduction. You can find him on a lot of podcasts, from TV channels to a lot of book conversations. And we are fortunate to have you with us, sir. And thank you so much for your time and welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Let me start my first question regarding your recent book, The Great Power Games. So this is basically a third installment of your powerful and compelling trilogy, The Unending Game, which was the first one, and then came The Ultimate Goal, and now the third one. So looking back, how do you think these three books together form a complete picture of how power is exercised in the modern world, sir?
Well, actually, if you ask me frankly, I didn't know I was going to write a trilogy. I thought, I got into conversation with the Penguin publisher, and she said, "Why don't you do a book?" A friend of mine had introduced me to her at a dinner. So I said, "Well, I don't know." I used to write for newspapers at that time and articles in the magazines and so on. So I said, "About what?" "Oh, about intelligence." I said, "No, I can't write about intelligence per se, certainly not about R&AW." They said, No, we must have a book from you." Anyway, we got around to conversing again, and I gave her a draft of what I wanted to, topics. But she insisted that it should be intelligence-based because that's, quite rightly, she said, "That's your forte, you must exploit that." So we came upon the unending game, and I did. I didn't expect that. I thought this was just one-off, iske baad chutti. But no, and I think the book did well, and so we got on to the second book. She asked me to do the second book, and then we thought of the ultimate goal. And in the first book, we had this chapter on controlling the narrative, which is an intelligence function largely in the West, and which is we don't do it in India seriously. We didn't at that time anyway. So we don't have the resources either. So we got down to doing the second book, The Ultimate Goal, which was how narratives are conceived, built up, thrown around. Then there are some long-term narratives which ensure superiority of yourself and inferiority of the other, and so on and so forth. Or then there were short-term narratives. And many of the narratives don't really have to be based on truth. I keep giving examples of how they alleged that Saddam Hussein had WMDs, sheltering Al Qaeda. None of it was true, but they just wanted to attack. And so they did. That did, I think, and that was released during COVID times. I didn't have a formal release where we invited 200 people to listen to us. It was online. That also did well, and then we got into the third book. Okay, chalo, two successes, let's make it a hat trick, and then I did the Great Power Games, which took longer to complete because we shifted house from Delhi to Bangalore, and it is not just a matter of shifting suitcases and boxes. It takes a while to settle down. So it slowed down. I think I lost the habit of writing in the 6 months interregnum. I got down to writing again, and then series of incidents took place. You ran into Ukraine. We ran into, then as soon as I was getting over that, then we had Hamas and their attack in Israel. So I thought, well, now it's the time to complete it. Then Donald Trump happened. So I couldn't finish a book without including what he has been up to when I was releasing a book end of 2025. So it's got stretched, but it's glad it's over, it's behind me. And I think even if I say so, it's doing pretty well in the market, been well received, because a lot of what I've said is happening, not maybe in the way I'd said it, the way I predicted, but it's happening.
But I think the stretch was worth it, sir. Today, we live in an era where there is a very blurred or thin line between what is news, actual news, and what are views.
Yeah.
In fact, I wanted to, get deep into your book. In fact, your book it opens with a very powerful quote about empires rising and falling over generations.
Yeah.
What inspired you to actually frame the entire narrative around this idea of long-term imperial cycles? And how do you think, you also mentioned about Trump, how do you think the American empire perfectly fit into this historical pattern?
First of all, empires have a lifetime, like human lives. I mean, they rise, they grow up, they become strong, and then they fade away. And it doesn't take weeks or days, it takes decades for that to happen, and for that decline to set in and another one take over. The only time I think there was sort of peaceful takeover of one empire from the other was when the British collapsed and the Americans took over. And the British were the underlings, although some recent arguments that I see online, they say that America is still ruled by Britain. Well, that's interesting. I don't know how that far that is true. But it is a fact of life. Empires will die out eventually, and new empires will take over, and there will be a conflict during that period because nobody wants to give up power easily. Nobody wants to give up that strength, that aura of greatness when there's a challenger. And for a long time, the Americans feared Russia, Soviet Union as the rival that would take over along with that communism. But then that didn't happen. And now they fear an autocratic China. I don't know whether it still is communist in the purest sense, but it's definitely autocratic. And Xi Jinping is a ruler who I see as becoming a little nervous about things. There are a number of dismissals that have taken place in the PLA and the CCP, which indicates that all is not well perhaps inside their closed system. And how that affects his external policies is we're yet to see all that. But yes, the other thing that happens with most of us, is we think that we are greater than everybody else. And now that I'm the king, I'm everything. My idea of quoting from the book, Carl Sagan's book, is to say that, hold it, we are nothing in the ultimate sense. We are just not even we're part of that dot. And the dot is part of a huge, huge thing. So let's get a little modest about the whole. Maybe life would get better then.
Let me just come to your experience. You have been a witness to a lot of geopolitical events, including your more than 3 decades of service in the R&AW. As someone who has led India's external intelligence agency, the R&AW, you have a rare insider's view. How did your experience in espionage shape your understanding of how great power actually play the games, as you describe in the book, through proxy wars, through NGOs, private enterprises, and the narrative control?
It comes to you by and by as you watch incidents taking place, as you watch a report being published in the newspapers, and you see that, 10 days later, it actually happened. Saddam Hussein had attacked Iraq soon after 79, I think 80. Before that, there was a huge conference in one of the think tanks in Britain where they discussed what would happen if Saddam Hussein attacked Iran. A lot of debate. The Iraqi ambassador was there, and the conclusion was that Iraq would win. A few days later, this news was carried in the newspapers. But this is what the think tank thing says. And a few weeks later, Saddam Hussein attacked Iran. So, I was a young officer, and I thought, well, this is rather strange. You talk about it, you publish it, and the attack takes place. Is there a linkage somewhere? They were building a narrative, and they built that short-term narrative that if this war, if the war takes place, the mullahs will lose, Islam will be triumphant, and it would be back to normal. As we all know, that did not happen. The war continued, came to a messy end, and that's it. There were other incidents like this where narratives were thrown around, and we would pick it up. We'd see a report in the press which was quite different from what we knew was happening, what had happened. But news carried, and people would ask questions based on that news. They couldn't ask questions on the other thing. And as a person from the intelligence, you couldn't possibly stand up and say, no, this is all false, because I have better information. I have authentic information. Just let it pass. And sometimes they were right, maybe. Sometimes we were right. And of course, the other thing always used to be, the intelligence failure, and so on and so forth. We never challenged that because there's no point. Because then you are getting into conversation, you're revealing data, you're revealing your sources, and so on. So we never challenged that. Let it ride. It's better not to engage.
What I really liked about your book was you also highlight a lot of internal challenges like demographic strains, water shortages, and political divisions as major obstacles for India. These are also areas where in academic and other parlance, what they call as a non-traditional security threats. In light of the ongoing global fragmentation, tech and resource wars that you described, what do you think, which of these internal issues do you think is going to pose the biggest risk to India, at least for the mid to long term, that is in the next 5 to 15 years?
I think we have to be very careful about the youth cohort, the young. First of all, having a young population is a great advantage to us, and we have to capitalize on it. You capitalize on it by giving them two things: education, or three things: education, good health, and job opportunity. If you do not give the latter two, or at least the latter three, health and jobs, then you have a problem. You have a huge problem, which will then cut across all sorts of. It'll cut across religion. It'll cut across languages. It'll cut across states, regions. The state is not there to provide job. Its primary job is to provide opportunities of creation of jobs and to make it easier for the private sector to do their business, expand quickly, employ quickly, and not let the talent run away to other countries. So we have to work in tandem with all this and do it now. I mean, now means yesterday actually. It's not even tomorrow. We have to do it now, and I'm not aware of. There are new universities I know being opened. There is far more activity of that kind. But does it match the job basket? Does it provide enough jobs? Or do we have? Well, we don't have the industry to provide those jobs. That is something that the experts would know whether we are in a position to do that or whether we are.
But speaking of the youth, sir, I also have to mention today you also live in an age of information explosion where an average youth who's in his 18 or 19 to 25 is also distracted by a lot of social media, etc. How do you think we can channelize their energy in a productive way?
Social media is a thing that is still new to us. Governments are probably slow in reacting to this phenomenon. And personally, I think what is coming out on YouTube or on even Netflix or even cinema is influence. You watch it, you imbibe it, and you move on that ground. Gen Z, as they call it, I suppose. We didn't have all that. We are not familiar.
Yeah, people who are born after 2000, we tend to call them Gen Z.
Yes, so they have a surfeit of this. In fact, they know no other word. You give them a telephone dial, they don't know how to use it. They don't know what it is. And I've seen grandsons and all, when I ask them to correct something on my cell phone, something I've struggled for half a day, they'll do it in 2 minutes and give it back to me. That is the speed. You can spread stories, opinions, which are carved out, which are pretend to be news. I think in 10 minutes you can have it all over the country and you can feed it to certain sections of society. Now, which government is prepared to handle that? That is our problem now. Social media is a very good thing to keep in touch with communication. It's also a very good thing to light the fire.
I just want to draw parallels with China. India is a country which still has got a lot of young, median age, where the age of the country is on our side because of the youth bulge.
Right.
Speaking of China, the China's rise under the philosophy which is hide your strength and bide your time is one of the central themes which also runs in the book in one of the chapters. You also warn about the dangers of artificial intelligence and the surveillance model and also including the tech wars. So, in your view, China is now moving beyond that cautious phase and where it has now grown comfortable and confident. What do you think the kind of risk does all these pose for the world?
Personally, I think Chinese will go on this track of high-tech development on these scales. I don't think they want to go into a hot war. They know it means devastation. It's pointless beyond nibbling at the Indian border now and then, threatening at Galwan or Doklam. Beyond that, they don't really want a war. They want to continue doing what they are doing. But I think they should be worried if the Americans eventually take all the jobs back by creating the manufacturing in their country. So they'll have to concentrate on countries like India to sell their product. If they don't sell their product, then they're doomed, because unlike us, they are an export-dependent country. The revenue has come, the growth has come after they joined WTO and became a massive manufacturing giant. And all the Westerners, Europe and America included, established factories there. The other thing is the work ethics is different there than it is here. The command is a command and it has to be obeyed tomorrow morning if necessary. And the West never bothered about whether it was slave labor or how the labor was treated. It didn't matter so long as the profit was rolling in. So the Americans allowed that to happen. Now Trump wants it back, and there you will have a tussle. He wants to isolate China. I'm not sure whether he is isolating himself or isolating China, but he is doing trying to do perhaps both. He wants to build his own empire westward. So we are at an inflection point now. Will US recover or will China overtake?
Speaking of the US, when I went through your book, when I read your book, in fact, you argue that one of the greatest threat to India's interest is not the Chinese or the Pakistan, but the United States itself. That's a very, very bold statement. Can you explain why do you believe so, and why India should be remain even wary of the US today?
I went by the yardstick of who can damage you most, who can cause you most harm. So Pakistan is a nuisance. It will be there all the time. Keep niggling at you, will throw terror at you, terror attacks at you. Short of throwing a nuclear bomb, he can't do anything else. And he will use that as a weapon to carry on terrorism. Mix it with his obsession with jihad and all that. So it is now a rich, not a profusely Islamic country with the nuclear bomb. And it needs India as a threat for the regime's survival, and the regime being Khaki. So Pakistan is out as far as I'm concerned. They're not going to be able to defeat us. They'll cause us problems now and then. China has a greater power to do greater damage. I mean, they can shut off waters of Brahmaputra and give you a really tough time in the Himalayas, and they can, in course of time, reach the Arabian Sea, and they're working on that with bases in Djibouti and Wadar and Southeast Asia. So they are moving there. They want to be the masters of Asia before becoming masters of the world. So their game is a different level. They can cause you more harm than Pakistan. The United States has had, along with many other Western countries, a consistent policy to keep us down. They will talk very gently, but they will not do anything to help you. Any of the conflicts that we have had with Pakistan or with China, they have either been ambivalent or in favor of Pakistan. So they can shut off the tariffs, the scheme by which they wanted to punish us. But I'm glad the government stood up and didn't paid attention, but looked the other way and did what they had to do. They have ongoing schemes of creating trouble inside India through Indians. And there are a number of NGOs who are fed by them, who were fed by them. I think there has been a clampdown on that also. So they want to keep India divided because the fear is that should India become successful, almost as equal to China, then there are two Asian giants who are going to compete with the West for resources and markets. As it is, they are having problems. They don't want more problems. So they now talk of things like population control. They don't mean control by just controlling it. They mean reducing it. Well, that's a huge step and a nasty one. But this is where we are.
But despite all the chaotic external environment and all the geopolitics, which is as always since times it's been in a state of flux, you seem to be in the latter part of your book. You seem to be very optimistic about Bharat's future. With the stress for the need for caution, you also mentioned, as mentioned before, internal challenges like demographic strains, water shortages, and political division. What do you see as the biggest internal obstacle to India's rise, and how do you think can India overcome it?
I think we have to learn to live together, regardless of religion, race, color, language, whatever. I mean, there always will be a little bit of difference between the northern and the south and the east and the west. So all countries have it. But we cannot let that become a fissure. That is not the way to do it. I mean, yeah, I'm sure in the south they have lots of Punjabi jokes, and in the north they have in Tamil jokes or Andhra jokes. So that's fun. That's the Brits. A small country would joke about the Yorkshire accent and so on and so forth. So that's fun. That shows a maturity. And we have not. We are an old country, very old civilization. But somewhere we're losing this little bit of self-confidence. I think we have to be together. As they say, if you hang together, otherwise they'll hang you separately. This business of seeking votes on grounds that are divisive is a dangerous policy. It's a hugely dangerous policy. It catches fire in no time. We have to avoid, and we must on our podcasts, on our broadcasts, on TV broadcasts. Facts are facts. News opinion is not fact. We shouldn't send out news opinion as facts. We have to avoid that. And the young have to learn that this is the country that has the future. This has the future because of them, because of the young, how they stand up to attempts at creating differences, attempts at eulogizing one section against the other. So we have to learn how to be together.
In the book, you also go on to support policies like the CAA and Operation Sindoor in the book. And how do these fit into the broader vision of India asserting its strategic autonomy and dealing with both external adversaries as well as adversaries within?
Our history of handling terrorism till 2014-15 was low key, not retaliatory against the source of terrorism. It was only this government which took on after the Uri attack. We had a counter attack, which was the second one was no, not Pelgam.
The
Also,
Pathankot attack. Pathankot attack happened.
no, the one for which we did Balakot, that attack, and finally the Pahalgam attack. We have upgraded our retaliation. The messaging has been clear that we are now not going to take terrorism under the nuclear umbrella lying down. We're going to hit you. Attacks will still continue, and I think we will continue to respond in our time, at our time of choosing. I think that's how we're going to handle terrorism. And what was the other part you want? Internal. Internal B, it's the same. It's the same thing that if you find that somebody is working against your national interests, creating divisions, then you have to just put a stop to it. I think number of NGOs have been declared invalid and closed down. They were spending money not for the cause that they had been created. A lot of foreign funds were coming in. So that all that has been stopped, and these things take time to have their effect. But then you also have your own politicians, you also have your own thinkers who think differently. What I mean to say is that democracy needs a good, healthy opposition that should sit in parliament and debate. We're not having that. We're having a democracy on the streets. We think it is democracy, it is not. So we've got to get back. People elected their members to go and talk on their behalf in parliament, not talk outside. All other nations worth their name, democratic nations, debate in parliament. They have sessions there. Whoever wins, wins. Then you all follow that. That is what we are not able to achieve. And a government which is meaning to do what it means to do will get strengthened if the opposition also agrees to it. And if it doesn't agree, then we have a problem to begin with.
Globally, now we have a lot of tensions which are taking place. The Russia-Ukraine, which was happening for more than 3 years. Now we have tensions in West Asia, the Gaza issue, rising religious tensions in Europe. And today, the discourse is in such a way that we see there is a clear shift towards a multipolar world. Among all these, which of these current flashpoints do you believe will have the most lasting impact on India and the global power balancer?
It's difficult to pinpoint one, but Iran is the closest to us, and it can spread more easily to India, its effects and after effects. So that is the conflict that we might have. The other conflicts, I think, are on their way out. It's all-time wars. It's a kind of a serial that's going on. You have Ukraine, so you cover it up with Gaza and Hamas and Israel. People's attention goes away from Ukraine, concentrates on this. Then you switch it to Iran or Venezuela, and you move around all over the world, and you then come out with a policy of new security doctrine, which talks of China and Russia mainly. You sit at the World Economic Forum, they don't talk about the rest of the world except Europe and America, as if the rest of the world. China is mentioned a little bit here and there. We are not mentioned. We are not in the league. So they are concentrating on the West is fearing loss of power, and it means to consolidate itself. So one of the two of this government representatives, I think Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State, said that our interest is the Western Hemisphere. Does it mean that the Eastern Hemisphere is now off the table as far as they're concerned? We are looking at a world in churn, chaos, multiple battles, all sorts of scams coming out in the West. And we believe that they were the purest of the pure, but no, there's huge scandals that are underneath the table, being swept away. So you see a change in the world. Chaos is the policy now. Rule of many wars. Then there is this paragraph in this latest defense statement, Trump government, that we have now got to rearm, re-equip, refurbish our military equipment. We need more money. So that's the game. They are now going to get ready. The US has destroyed one part of, let's say, Balkans in the 1990s. And who moved in to re-equip them, refurbish them? The US. They did it in Iraq, and they will eventually do it in Syria also, and anywhere else in the Middle East, Israel. Gaza, they want to make it into a Gaza Riviera. Money goes both ways. You sell arms, you make money. You destroy arms, you replenish it with more arms. And when all is done, you rehabilitate and reconstruct the country by a different part of the system. There was an article by States Department of Construction and Department of Destruction and Department of Construction in the U.S. government, and one would destroy and the other would rebuild. The money stayed in U.S. all the time. For a country which has got $36 trillion debt today, trillion dollar debt today, how is it the strongest country still? So I think the others are scared that if that breaks, then their own systems will collapse. So you borrow so much that everybody is scared that if you take it back, then banks also leave the writing in red. Because if you make it black, then where does the money come from? So the world
Sorry, sir, please go ahead.
No, it's okay.
For our audience, before I conclude, I just want to ask this final question, especially our young scholars who are practitioners and students who are witnessing these fast-paced events unfold. Most important lesson from the book, The Great Power Games, that should guide India's approach to the world in 2026 and beyond.
It's a very difficult thing to answer for me. Youngsters of today are totally different from the youngsters of like what we were, because we didn't live in endless wars. We didn't live with computers even. When we grew up, there was no such thing as a cell phone. And somebody told me all your knowledge will be carried on the palm, in an equipment on the palm of your hand. I couldn't believe it, because how could that be? But now you do. So what the young have to do, I think, is not to lose it depends on us also. We have to teach them that their old values have to stay intact. You have to grow stronger on the basis of your own values. What was I thinking of in the morning when I thought about this topic? Okay, 1 sec. Give me a sec. You can pause this thing if you like.
Yeah, no worries, sir. Huh? I can edit it, so no issues.
Something on the lines that you have to be faithful to your values. You have to be faithful to and if you want to take, ambition is good, but not at the cost of values. Never mind if you have a fall. It's not the fall that matters. It's how you rise up that matters. Don't expect everything will be given to you in life. You will have to your own life by doing the right thing for the right people. Leadership does not mean dominance. Leadership means being an example. Leadership doesn't come from being on the top of the ladder. A platoon or a company or a battalion also has its leaders. So you have to lead by example, and you have to share the rewards. So unless we learn to do that, and unless we learn to, nothing will come to you in the present world on a platter except for the chosen few. Leadership is not dynastic. If it is a dynastic leadership, it not be the right kind.
It's a very beautiful quote which you just mentioned. It doesn't matter if you fall, but how you rise up matters the most. Yes. If I can just indulge you with one question, coming from your experience and wisdom, what would be that one thing that you would tell to UPSC aspirants who have qualified to interview but still they are not able to clear it? What would be that one thing that you would advise them? This I also asked from my personal experience, who really wanted to make the cut and wanted to do something for the country and for the society, but they were not able to because they didn't make the cut.
I don't know what kind of interviews we have these days. In our days, it used to be called personality check tests, not checking knowledge. So I think what a candidate has to do when he sits in front of that 7, 8, 10 big wigs, and they can overawe you. So the first thing is don't get overawed. Second is if you're differing from them, differ politely, but don't make an issue. Okay? Show that you have an alternative opinion if you have one, and be honest about anything else that you have to. Don't hide. If it's a personality test, you get full marks for that. But if it's a test of knowledge, God knows. because they'll know more than you. So
As we come to the conclusion of this interesting conversation with you, I should take this opportunity to thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing your invaluable insights with us today. We really appreciate and we are grateful for taking the time to discuss your recent book, The Great Power Games from Western Decline to Eastern Ascent, with us. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to pick up Shri Vikram Sood's recent book for comprehensive exploration of these critical issues. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you. Sir, thank you so much, sir.
thank you. All the best. Take care.